Thank you, Asia. It's now my turn to put a few words into this chapter too. Well, this is the question: why do we wish to increase the eligibility age? There may be alternatives to this, which we will discuss later, and we'll see if there are choices we can make in order to have a solution for this sustainability issue. Mostly we have observed in many countries that the eligibility age has tended to increase. So out of the choices available, it seems that this is the most favored option in most cases. As in chapter 1, there's a discussion about this discrepancy between expected retirement age and the actual retirement age. There seems to be the expectation far exceeds the actual, which in the order of 4 to 7 years. That would create major issues, and we wish to see what are the alternatives to increasing the retirement age. Now, generally, as discussed earlier, there are macroeconomic issues, there are major macro issues, there are overall issues that actuaries look at, and there are individual issues that actuaries also look at. From policy perspectives, we look at the overall effect of increasing the eligibility age, and we ignore the individual circumstances, whereas when we are considering individual choices, the situation reverses. Now, what are the reasons for this change? Well, I like to think that in my days, perhaps, we used to have larger families, more children, and nowadays the options for the young have changed. Fertility has fallen. In my country, in Iran, fertility was high. I'm coming from a family of 7. Now my own family is 4, and it's falling further. Fertility in Iran is 1.7, where it was traditionally greater than 4. And this is not an exception. Iran is a high fertility country usually, and is falling back. And in most developed countries, it's even further than that. So the critical value of 2 is the yarding stick for most countries. Most fertility values are lower than 2, and this is a major issue. And in addition to that, we have greater longevity. Most of us live longer than previously thought of, and this is the longevity issue which we wish to address. Societies are aging. This is a fact. And we have seen in the report that population pyramids are getting narrowed at the base, which means there are lower fertilities, lower younger generations, and this lower basis has to support the greater population which is aging. Now, in addition to that, we see that the dependency ratio as a result of that low fertility is changing and is increasing. So we have a majority, which are typically the older generation, depend on a young minority, which are the younger generation not wishing to have large families, perhaps. Now, what do we need to do? As discussed, and we will be discussing other chapters, actuaries need to watch out for several things. We need to watch out changes which are taking place, in particular, changes which are taking place firstly due to life expectancy and longevity, and then reasons for that change, which include health improvements. In the old days, perhaps health care wasn't as good as it is nowadays, and therefore we need to take more attention to access to health, which is available in most countries. There are changes in lifestyles. Countries which previously only thought about large families in order to support the family, in order to support the old age, nowadays do not invest in young and do not invest in children. In developing countries, the idea was that you organize a large family, and that is your pension plan. But now, when the government comes in and replaces family, then your pension plan has changed. You do not depend on the young. You do not depend on your children. You do not need children to support you in the old age. So this is a change in lifestyles, and we need to be aware of that. and take care that this change is built into our models, which we are going to estimate on the sustainability of pension plans. Now, we need to carry out sensitivity tests, which most of us do, and to see how these changes are taking place, and we carry out regular reviews. Now, as we've mentioned it several times, the sustainability is the issue that we want to tackle. And this depends on various plans that we are talking about. In most countries, there are 3 tiers, multiple tiers, and the sustainability issue in each tier is different. We need to tackle it separately. It is not one issue covering all 3 tiers. So perhaps we need to be more particular about how sustainability is tackled within each tier. We also need to consider if longevity it is different or the same in different groups within the plan. Now, as far as government and major policies are concerned, they are concerned about first tier, which affects social securities generally, as opposed to private insurance companies, private pension companies, who are concerned with second and third tiers. Well, this picture shows how money is accumulating over working years and how it is spent out during retirement ages. And the ratio of the number of years one accumulates money in order to save for retirement is changing. So there are 31 countries here in this figure. In 6 of them, the ratio of the accumulation of money over accumulation of money is 0.6. In 19 of them, is about equal, and in 6 is less than 4, or equal to 4. Well, this is one of those pictures we need to watch for, actually need to watch for in order to balance, in order to maintain sustainability, whether it is a social security system or individual plan. And this is the major equation, one might say, how we are going to balance payments out in pension and money coming in terms of contributions. Now, what are the alternatives? Invariably, we have discussed, and we will discuss, alternatives to increasing retirement age. This increasing retirement age is turning into a political issue. And so, actuaries, while wanting to be a specialist, professionals, not getting involved into politics perhaps, would have to look at it. We cannot ignore this. So, first option, increasing accumulation period, asking people to retire later than usual, and there are various ways we can tackle this, put penalties and encourage incentives to retire later and so on. The paper discusses various forms of this. Increasing contributions, that is not very popular, but if worse come to worse, we have to do it. Perhaps this is one of the things which actuaries could suggest, increasing contributions. Reducing benefits, not very popular. That is one of the reasons why we get the second job after retirement. In particular in Iran, that is the case. People wish to retire early. I could retire now and get my second job, so I have double salary. And I've heard from my colleagues that this is also happening in Canada and other places. Well, living costs is a major issue. If we could afford on one salary, so we just go fishing. Whereas that doesn't take place. We have to worry about our kids' fees and so on. So reducing benefits is not going to be very popular, but one alternative. Looking for better economic returns. Well, where are those economies? Most investment fund managers and economists look for various economies where things grow faster. But then these places are very rare, very difficult to find. And if you find a country in which there is high growth, you typically find there is high risk as well. There's a lot of growth in Iran, but there is high risk as well. So it doesn't come cheaply, it comes at a price. Redistribution of consumption and wealth, that is the major issues generations consider. whether we should take out of one generation and pay to the other generation, I look at it this way. Is it my son who is going to pay for my retirement, or my neighbor's son, or somebody like that? So it is a major issue we cannot ignore. Either we have to redistribute from part of the population into another part, which turns into a political concern, or generational concern. We could reconsider labor force and productivity, which means we have to work harder, produce more, which is very stressful, and usually productivity is also associated with higher pay. Productivity concerns in employment relations implies usually you have to offer higher wages, so higher productivity comes with higher salaries, higher costs. And the last option could be immigration. That is also a political issue. Nowadays, we find lots of immigration going in many places, but it is not one issue of only considering pensions. You have to consider families, the cultural issues, and so many different and conflicting concerns regarding immigration. And here's my last slide, top 10. In immigration, United States, Russia, and so on. I like to think in terms of economics when looking at these immigration figures. Most people who want to immigrate think for countries where it is greater luck, greater improvement, greater prospect of economics. So the countries we see here are generally countries who are advanced in economics, are promising better returns, and not necessarily those countries which are in need of immigrants. So on the one hand, this is one solution, but as an associated political concern comes with immigration, and I think we need to consider both of those. Thank you very much.